This story is about Noah, a human marked as a war criminal, and Korra, a giant exiled from her clan. Both carry deep pain and guilt from a terrible war that cost many lives. When they meet in a frozen, harsh land, they must learn to survive together despite their hatred and history. The story is emotional and tense, filled with moments of danger, hope, and hard choices. Their struggle is not only for life but for a chance to break the endless cycle of violence between humans and giants. The stakes are high: survival, trust, and the possibility of a new future that neither expected. The brand on Noah Haro's forehead burned like fire, sharp and wet against his skin. He bit down on the leather strap in his mouth, tasting copper where his cheek had been torn open by the iron's cruel edge. Blood ran cold down his face, freezing almost as soon as it left him. Behind thick glass, the warden's voice crackled out, cold and distant. For the murder of 43 souls during a ceasefire. For breaking the rules of war between the Bastion and the northern clans. For bringing shame on mankind's survival. Your sentence is exile. Those words meant nothing. All Noah felt was the ice biting at his bare feet, the cold wind slicing through the thin wool he wore. His gear, the leather that had kept him alive for 6 years of patrols, the weapons that had saved him more than once, were gone, locked away in an iron chest. Only the brand and his pain remained. A guard reached for the smooth gray stone clenched in his fist. A river stone, unremarkable but stained with his brother Tom's blood. Noah gasped a desperate "please," and the guard looked to the warden. A brief nod. The stone stayed with him. The heavy gates clanged shut behind him. The bitter cold hit him like a wave. The walls of the bastion rose behind like frozen mountains, chimneys bleeding smoke into the dark sky. Home was gone. The wind carried a strange smell, something burning far away. Memories came like crashing waves. The crackle of fire, flesh burning, screams ringing in the night. Giants fleeing their homes, cloaks aflame, children caught in the terror. Noah had been trained to control the battlefield, to cut off escape routes, but that night he had used that training on families during their sacred night, a night when warriors laid down their arms. A giant child had reached a window. Noah's crossbow fired 3 quarrels into its chest. He remembered the blood, the screams, the cold that burned deeper than any wound. He fell to his knees in the snow, bile freezing before it hit the ground. Tears froze over his eyes. The brand pulsed with pain, a cruel rhythm beating with his heart. Get up. Move. Die standing. He forced his body upright and stepped forward into the endless black. Far from the bastion, deep in a glacier cave, Korra worked the ice with careful hands. Her breath formed little ghosts in the cold blue light. Her carving was of her youngest sister, small and proud, made immortal in frozen beauty. 2 months had passed since her exile. The scar on her face a thick rope of healed flesh, aching when the air pressure dropped. Storms came often in winter. She had tracked the herd of rhyme stags for 3 days, surviving on pine bark and frozen hair. She expected hunters, her father's warriors, come to finish what he had started, to punish her for weakness, for sparing human children. But instead, she saw a lone figure stumbling through the snow. A young human, nearly naked, bleeding, and branded as a war criminal. Rage and shock filled her chest. Her cousins had died that night, and this human had been the butcher. She growled low, claws digging into the stone beneath her feet. She attacked. The storm howled as Korra charged. Her spear aimed for his gut. The human dodged, fast and sharp despite his weakness. He fought with skill born of desperation. She hit his knee with the butt of her spear. Pain shot up his leg, but he answered with ice shards, cutting her flesh. They circled each other, locked in a deadly dance across the frozen river. Noah's world narrowed to survival: duck, strike, roll. He slipped beneath her, slicing her leg with a stone shard. She roared, furious, and brought the spear down across his ribs. He fell hard on the ice, the cold biting deeper than any wound. She loomed over him, ready to end it. The river groaned beneath the ice. Suddenly, the ice cracked. They plunged into the freezing water together, claws and hands scrambling for grip. The river fought to drag them under, cold and hungry. Korra's strength pulled Noah to a ledge of ice, gasping and broken but alive. Between ragged breaths, their eyes met across the ice. There was no forgiveness, no mercy. Only the sharp edge of recognition. Both were dying, but who would last longer? In the depths of the cave, the air grew warmer, alive with steam from cracks in the stone. Noah followed the wall with shaking hands, the giant's heavy steps echoing behind him. For 2 days, they watched each other, silent and wary. Hunger gnawed at them both. One night, a starving cave predator appeared, a large white-furred creature with red eyes. Noah scrambled to finish a spear. The beast lunged. Korah's war spear struck first, throwing the creature off balance. With a heavy rock, she crushed its skull. They butchered the carcass in silence, sharing the meat without words. For the first time, they worked as one around the fire, they shared stories. Noah spoke of Tom, his brother, the artist who had sketched giant petroglyphs, trying to understand their history. He showed Korah a water-stained notebook filled with the giant's art, saved from destruction. Korah told of her sister who sang old songs, softening even their hard-hearted father. She carved wooden figures, a small army to carry their stories when no voices remained. They laughed softly, the warmth of fire chasing away the cold for a moment. They were broken, haunted by ghosts and guilt, but for once, there was a fragile connection. But the barons were harsh, and enemies close. One day, Wendigos, mad humans who had lost all reason, attacked their cave. Blood ran freely in the fight. Korah and Noah fought side by side, wounds slow to heal, but unyielding. When the attackers were dead, they cleaned their wounds together, sharing what little they had. Trust was a fragile thread stretched taut between enemies, but it held. Outside, the cold wind blew, carrying the promise of a harsh winter and new dangers. Months passed. The giant and human hunted and survived, learning from each other. The old hate lingered, but so did something new, a hope that maybe, just maybe, they could break the cycle. Their shared fire burned bright against the dark cold, a symbol of a fragile peace in a world torn by war and pain. But beyond the valley, shadows moved. Old enemies followed their trail, waiting for the moment when old rules would snap back, when the giant would face her clan, and the human would face judgment for the night of first snow. The story had only just begun. The morning was cold and clear. Snow sparkled under a pale sun, but the warmth was a lie. The cold ran deep in the bones of the land, like the sorrow in Noah's heart. He lay awake, muscles stiff from the night. The brand on his forehead was now a raised scar, but the memory of burning flesh and screams still haunted his dreams. Beside him, Korah stirred, her heavy breathing slow and steady. For 3 months, they had survived together, an uneasy pair bound by exile and pain. They were not friends. Not allies. Not even enemies now. Something else, something fragile. Today, the silence between them felt different. Less sharp. Noah pushed himself up, his ribs aching. The broken bones from their fight still reminded him of every mistake. Korah watched him from across the fire, her scarred face unreadable. "Hunting today," she said. Her voice was rough but calm. Noah nodded, gathering his spear and the jagged stones they used as weapons. They moved out into the frozen wasteland, side by side, moving silently through the snow. The giants knew the land well, but Noah's sharp eyes caught details Korah missed, subtle signs in the snow, broken branches, distant tracks. They hunted together, a strange rhythm building between them. Korah's strength brought down heavy prey, Noah's aim finished the kill. For a moment, they shared the simple act of survival, and the weight of their pasts grew lighter. But the barons held no peace for long. As they returned with their kill, Noah's sharp gaze caught movement on the ridge, dark shapes moving against the white. "Giants," he whispered. Korah stiffened. She knew those shapes too. Warriors from her clan, hunting them. "We have no time," she said. "They will bring judgment." Noah clenched his jaw. The brand still burned beneath his scar. They had both broken the rules. Both carried scars deeper than flesh. The giants moved fast, their weapons lowered but eyes hard. Jorg the scarred led them, half his face a twisted ruin, his good eye sharp as ice. "You live, daughter," Jorg's voice rumbled like thunder. His gaze swept to Noah. "And you, butcher." The word cut through the cold like a blade. Jorg's warriors stepped back, forming a circle around the three. The air grew heavy with old hatred and new pain. Korah's stance was steady but tired. She had been cast out once for weakness, now for betrayal. She stood with the man who had burned their villages, killed children, and brought death on their sacred night. You sheltered him. Fed him. Taught him our ways. Jorg's voice was low and fierce. Why? Cora looked to Noah. Because I saw something beyond the brand. Beyond the war. Jorg's rage exploded. You chose this abomination over your clan. Over your honor. He raised his voice, his words carrying the weight of ancient laws. You are cast out twice. Your name is struck from the songs. You are nothing. The cold seemed to grow deeper, silence falling like a shroud. Jorg turned to Noah. I challenge you. Single combat to the death. Noah stepped forward, the weight of the past heavy on his shoulders. I accept. No weapons but what the earth provides. The warriors parted, creating a rough circle on the stone. The ground was hard and cold beneath their bare feet. The stakes were more than life or death, it was the fate of old grudges, broken families, and the hope for something new. Jorg charged, his massive frame moving with unexpected speed. Noah waited, dodging the crushing blows by inches. One solid hit would shatter bones, end everything. Noah rolled between Jorg's legs and drove a sharp stone into the giant's kidney. Jorg roared, pain and fury mixing into a deadly storm. The giant fought back, slamming Noah into the ground. His ribs screamed in protest, but Noah forced himself up. Move. Fight. Survive. Jorg's attacks became more calculated, testing Noah's limits. But the human's mind was quick, every movement a desperate prayer for breath and life. Then, with the last of his strength, Noah threw Tom's river stone, the blood-stained token of his brother, and struck Jorg's injured knee. The giant screamed, collapsing with a wet crack. Noah crawled to a nearby boulder and pulled himself up. Jorg lay on the ground, fury burning in his one good eye. Do it, the giant growled. Finish me, butcher. Noah stood above him, stone raised. But something inside broke. He fell to his knees, tears freezing on his cheeks. I'm sorry. For everything. Jorg stared, confusion and pain in his gaze. Noah pressed his forehead to the cold stone. I carry their faces, their names. I am done with this blood. The silence stretched. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Jorg's hand moved to his knife, then dropped it. I hate you, he said, voice raw with grief. But I understand. Cora knelt between them, placing a hand on each. There has to be a way. Not forgiveness, but forward. Jorg looked at Noah. A valley, south of here. Steam vents, game, shelter. A chance to build something different. Noah nodded, exhausted but hopeful. A chance. The old hatred did not disappear, but for the first time, it did not consume them. 8 months later, the settlement stood among the steaming vents, a fragile mix of giants and humans. 50 souls or so, drawn by whispers of a place where the old wars did not rule. Trust was hard, but hunger was harder. Together, they built homes, hunted, and learned. Noah watched from a ridge as mixed patrols returned from the hunt, giants and humans moving as one. Cora joined him, her laughter deeper and fuller than he remembered. The council meets tonight, she said. The northern clans are uneasy. Noah smiled. That's how it works. Bite me. They laughed, the sound carrying through the cold air. But beneath the laughter, a new tension stirred. Cora pulled Noah aside. There is something you and my father must know. In the warmth of the lodge, Jorg sat, his carved walking stick across his knees. Cora took a deep breath. I am with child. The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. Jorg and Noah stared at her, shock and wonder mixing in their eyes. This child, Cora said, touching her stomach protectively, is proof. Proof that the old ways can change. Jorg grunted, a slow smile breaking through his scars. I will carve a walking stick for this child. To remind me of the steps we take. Noah nodded. Not forgiveness. But a start. Outside, the settlement glowed softly in the growing dusk. Tom's river stone sat on the mantel, a quiet reminder of loss, choice, and hope. 2 figures stood side by side, human and giant, carving a new story in a world still filled with old scars. The giant had roared with laughter once. Now, a human had broken the rules, and something new was born. Winter's grip tightened on the valley. The steam vents cast pale mist over the growing settlement, where giants and humans lived side by side, but not without struggle. Old wounds ran deep in every heart. Trust was fragile, a thread stretched thin across a frozen chasm. Noah sat beside the fire, watching young hunters practice with bows. His fingers traced the worn leather of his crossbow, still stained with the ghosts of the past. The brand on his forehead was a white scar now, a reminder, but not a sentence. Cora approached, her massive frame moving silently despite the cold. Her scarred face softened when she saw him. The council meets tonight. Tensions rise with the northern clans. Noah nodded, his breath forming small clouds. They fear change. Fear what this child means. Cora knelt, touching her still flat belly gently. It means hope. And danger. The lodge filled with voices, giants' deep rumbling and humans' sharper tones. Some spoke with anger, others with fear. Jorg, seated beside Noah and Cora, raised a heavy hand. We stand on the edge of a new world, Jorg began. Our laws have served us for generations. But today, we face something different. A child born of both clans, a symbol that our hatred may end. Murmurs ran through the room. A giant warrior stood, voice booming. This is an abomination. The clans will not accept it. We must reject this betrayal. Noah's jaw tightened. If you reject it, you reject survival. Hunger and cold do not care for your pride. Jorg raised his hand again. Peace is hard, but necessary. We will protect this child. Together. Outside, snow began to fall again. The fires of the settlement flickered beneath the pale sky. Noah and Cora stood together, watching their people. I never thought I'd see giants and humans build something like this, Noah said softly. Cora smiled faintly. Neither did I. But the world changes. We must, too. They shared a quiet moment. No words, just breath and hope. Days later, a scout rushed into camp, breathless and wide-eyed. Wendigos. A large group moving south. They've tracked you. Fear tightened in the chest of every listener. Wendigos were not just enemies, they were madness made flesh. Humans who had lost their minds, driven by hunger and desperation. Jorg's face hardened. We prepare. We fight. For our future. Noah checked his weapons, feeling the weight of every choice he'd made. Cora stood tall beside him, spear in hand. Together, they would face the storm. The Wendigo struck at dawn, shadows crashing against the fragile peace. The fight was brutal. Snow mixed with blood, screams tearing the cold air. Noah fought with a cold fury, every strike fueled by loss and hope. Cora moved like a tempest, her spear cutting through enemies with fierce precision. Side by side, they defended their home. Wounds came fast, but so did resolve. When the last Wendigo fell, silence settled over the battered camp. Noah tended to Cora's bleeding leg, his hand steady despite the shaking in his own body. She met his eyes. We survive because of each other. He nodded. Because we are not the monsters they think we are. The fire crackled between them, a fragile promise burning in the darkness. Weeks passed. The child grew inside Cora, a secret hope between two worlds. The northern clans sent envoys, their faces hard but their words softer. Change was coming, slow but unstoppable. Noah and Cora taught the young ones, giants and humans alike, sharing knowledge and stories. The old songs mixed with new tales, a harmony born from pain. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Cora carved a figure in wood, a small giant and human standing together against a storm. Noah smiled. Your sister would be proud. Cora nodded, eyes bright with unshed tears. But peace was never safe. One night, distant voices echoed on the wind, giants from the northern clans, marching to challenge the settlement. Jorg gathered the warriors, his scarred face grim. No more running, he said. We stand our ground. Noah gripped his spear tightly. Cora's hand found his, strong and sure. Together, they faced the coming storm, not just of weapons, but of old hatred rising to break what they had built. The giants charged at dawn, earth shaking beneath their steps. Noah and Cora met them in the killing ground, the frozen stone cold beneath their feet. Jorg stepped forward, raising his carved walking stick. "This is our home. Our future." The two sides clashed, steel and stone meeting with thunderous force. But Noah fought not just with spear and stone, but with words, calling for an end to the endless cycle. Korah's voice rose above the battle, fierce and unyielding. "Enough." The warriors paused, breath misting in the cold air. Jorg looked to Noah, then to Korah, seeing not enemies, but something new, a chance. The battle ended, not with death, but with the promise of a different path. The settlement survived the fight, scars deep but healing. Noah and Korah stood once more on the ridge, watching the growing village below. Their child would be born into a world still torn, but with a hope neither had dared to dream. The giant had roared with laughter. A human had broken the rules. And now, together, they would write a new story. The birth came with the thaw of spring, gentle and quiet beneath the pale light of dawn. The settlement had grown, stubborn and small, but full of life. Giants and humans worked side by side, their pasts tangled but no longer chains. Korah's breath came in steady waves as Noah held their child for the first time. The baby's skin was soft, eyes wide and curious, a living symbol of hope carved from blood and ice. Noah's hands trembled. The brand on his forehead was a white scar now, but in that moment, it felt like a burden lifted, at least for a while. "Name him," Korah whispered, voice raw with emotion. Noah smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes. "Tom," he said, after the brother they both had lost. The news of the child spread quickly. Some giants whispered in fear, others in wonder. Among humans, hope clashed with suspicion. But in the settlement, the child was a bridge, a bond forged not by laws, but by love and survival. Jorg, once a furious warrior, now sat beside them in the lodge. His scarred face was softer with age, marked by battles won and losses grieved. "This child," he said quietly one evening, "is proof we can be more than enemies." Noah nodded. "We have to be." But peace was fragile. The northern clans remained wary, their leaders slow to trust. A delegation arrived, faces hard as stone, eyes sharp with suspicion. "We respect your courage," the tallest giant said. "But this child challenges the old ways. Some will never accept it." Korah met his gaze, steady and unyielding. "Then those who cannot accept must leave." The council hall fell silent. The words were simple but heavy, a line drawn in the snow. Winter returned harsher than before. The cold bit deeper, but the settlement had grown stronger. Giants and humans hunted together, their steps in sync, their voices sharing stories under the endless night sky. One night, as snow fell soft and thick, Noah sat with Korah near the fire. Their child slept between them, small and warm. "I never imagined this," Noah said softly. "A family." Korah smiled, her scarred face softening. "Neither did I. But we make our own stories now." The following day, a scout returned, breathless and pale. "More Wendigos. Larger group. They're coming." Fear returned, sharp and cold. Jorg stood tall, his walking stick carved with symbols of strength and peace. "We will stand together." Noah and Korah prepared for battle, but this time, it was different. They fought not just for survival, but for the future of their child and their people. The Wendigos attacked at dawn, fierce and wild. The battle was brutal, snow turning red beneath boots and claws. But the settlement stood firm. Giants and humans fought side by side, their unity a shield stronger than any blade. Noah's spear found its mark, Korah's strength unyielding. Together, they held the line. When the last Wendigo fell, silence reclaimed the valley. The cost was high. Wounds ran deep, but so did resolve. The settlement began to heal, scars becoming stories to pass down. Jorg looked at Noah and Korah, pride shining through his pain. "You have done what many thought impossible. You have made peace." Noah shook his head. "Peace is a choice we make every day." Korah added, "And sometimes, it means fighting for it." Months passed, and spring's light grew stronger. The child grew too, laughter filling the valley where silence once ruled. Giants and humans learned from each other, building homes, sharing songs, and dreaming of a world without war. Noah stood on the ridge one evening, watching the sun set over the settlement. Korah joined him, their hands finding each other's. We've come far, Noah said. Korah nodded. But the road is long. That night, beneath the stars, they made a promise, to protect their child, their people, and the fragile hope they carried. The giant who once roared with laughter had found something new. The human who broke the rules had forged a new path. Together, they would face whatever came next. Winter's chill had faded, replaced by the soft warmth of spring's return. The valley glowed with life. Giants and humans moved together, their steps no longer echoes of old battles but rhythms of new beginnings. Noah stood on the ridge, the rising sun casting gold over the steaming vents below. The settlement had grown beyond his wildest hopes. Families, giant and human, shared meals, stories, and laughter. The child, small and strong, played among them, a living symbol of hope. Korah came beside him, her scarred face softer in the morning light. "The council meeting tonight," she said. "There are still those who resist." Noah nodded. Change is never easy. Inside the lodge, voices rose and fell in heated debate. The northern clans argued tradition, some refusing to accept the new way. But others, tired, worn by endless war, stood with Noah and Korah. Jorg, leaning heavily on his carved walking stick, raised a steady voice. "We stand at a crossroads. We can choose to fight old ghosts or build a future." The room grew quiet. The weight of his words settled. The settlement was not perfect, but it was theirs. Outside, the child laughed, running between towering legs and small hands alike. Noah watched, heart full and heavy. The brand on his forehead no longer defined him. It was a scar, part of his story, but not the whole. Korah smiled at him. "This child will carry both worlds. Teach them. Protect them." Noah reached for her hand, warmth spreading through the cold morning. Together. But peace remained fragile. Rumors drifted on the wind, distant war drums, whispers of old enemies gathering strength. The barons were not done with them yet. Jorg approached, his eyes sharp despite years of pain. "We must be ready. For our families, for our future." Noah and Korah exchanged a glance, steeling themselves for what might come. They had broken the cycle once. They would do it again. Night fell, blanketing the valley in stars. Around the fire, giants and humans sat side by side. Stories were shared, of loss, hope, and dreams. Noah told the tale of Tom, his brother, the artist who saw beauty in frozen stone. Korah carved a small figure, giant and human standing united against the storm. Their voices joined in song, a melody both old and new, echoing through the night. The giant who once roared with laughter now watched with quiet strength. The human who broke the rules now carried hope in his scars. Together, they had changed the world. Not by forgetting the past, but by choosing a new path, one of survival, trust, and maybe, just maybe, peace. The brand on Noah's forehead was a scar. The wound was deep, but healing. And beneath the endless sky, their story was only just beginning.